exactly what has been discussed here on the show, and we've been talking about, the previous discussions with UIF, and of course also with the TERS, the temporary employee benefit scheme, and why companies are being allowed to essentially get away with not applying for their employers, and it is certainly very distressing. But we've also been inundated with requests to talk about retrenchments during the lockdown. If you unfortunately find yourself without a job right now, what exactly can you do? What are the rights of people who have been retrenched during COVID-19? Bheki Nhlapho is Senior Associate at the Cliff Decker Hofmeyer Employment Practice, and he joins us now. Bheki, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Sakina. Thank you for having me.
Bheki, before we discuss the rights of the individual who has lost his or her job, has COVID-19 and this lockdown in particular brought to the fore any new and yet to be determined complications in terms of companies and retrenchment?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sakina. So, yes, there has been a spike on retrenchments as stated by the director of the SABC. Obviously, especially level 5 lockdown, that has led to a lot of companies closing, either partially or closing for the, closing shop. So there has been a spike in new retrenchments as a result directly from COVID-19 lockdown.
So if a company wants to retrench during this lockdown period, is there a specific process that they need to go through to ensure that it is done within the framework of the law?
Yeah. So the retrenchments, whether arising from COVID-19 or from your general restructuring, the law still applies in the sense that the protection of employees is still of paramount importance. So the process in terms of the Labour Relations Act, in terms of Section 189 in small scales or 189A in large scale retrenchment, still applies. I think the biggest question has been the practicality of, with the social distancing, how does it work, especially with appointing CCMA facilitators? Would they come to the site? But we have seen, or rather on Saturday, the CCMA had communicated to the public that they are opening. Therefore, we'll see a lot of, facilitation taking place, and a lot of companies and employees being assisted in their retrenchment process.
Bheki, many people have also been complaining that their employers have used this lockdown almost as a smokescreen to retrench or to cut salaries. And they perhaps also could have halted work or salary payments for the period of the lockdown without much explanation going to the employees. So what's the legality around this?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to appreciate that although the lockdown has brought new dimensions in terms of our labor laws, the scheme of our labor laws remains the same, which is where you change terms and conditions of employment, there must be a consultation. But most importantly, when you look at what the lockdown has brought to the fore, has been new reasons for retrenchment, such as the employers have, many companies in fact, have moved towards the digital workplace where they've seen that in fact we can survive in remote working. Therefore, we don't need the excess of employees. We don't need the numbers. We don't need the large sort of general labor. So from the lockdown, there will be grounds, in fact, lessons where employers will say, post-lockdown, I'll no longer need to run my business in this way. I'll run it in this way. So definitely the lockdown has brought many lessons and sort of changed the landscape a bit. But the protection of employees remains important, and really the law remains the same. Insofar as salaries, you'd be aware, Sakina, that there was funding from the government, especially the UIF. One of the TERS, employees were encouraged to, in instances where the employer is partially closing down, or it's closing down for 3 months, for the employers to apply for TERS. But I'm aware that there is a new directive that allows, in certain circumstances, employees to apply for the TERS directly. So I think that's something to commend from the government, seeing that some employers have gotten in the way of assisting their employees. So it's opening up to the employees to say, take the initiative and ensure that your rights are protected.
And that's a good follow-on from the interview we had previously about payroll. And of course, the concern here is, once again, Bheki, it seems as though the UIF is inundated. It seems as though the system is suffering. If we have more people now coming on board, what are the chances of these employees who are going to apply now actually receiving any sort of compensation before the lockdown ends even? Because we know women who are pregnant go to apply for UIF and very often they return to work without receiving payment.
I think, we must appreciate that the UIF system has never been inundated in this manner before. So we must expect, some delays in the system. But I'm aware that the Minister of Employment and Labour has indicated to the public that he would like the public to remain patient. And I do believe that, employees will be paid as long as they've lodged their claim in the required form and manner. So it's a matter of patience. But I believe that the system is working. And you'd be aware that some companies have already been paid. So I think that's a good sign that the system is working.
The other problem, Bheki, is, of course, people slipping through the cracks. Now, some companies are concerned they will not survive this lockdown. We know that they can approach the Solidarity Fund for some help. But when it comes to the employees, as you say, there's UIF. But if UIF cannot assist and they're told because they already registered, they cannot apply for any other social grant relief, where does that leave the employee?
I think the lessons from the lockdown when it started has been that closing of businesses is the last resort. So before you tell employees that you can no longer operate, you must explore paid leave, that they must use their accrued leave. If that doesn't work, they must use unpaid leave. If that doesn't work, you request them to stay at home. So then you get to the retrenchment of employees. It is an unfortunate situation where we find ourselves that employees may lose their jobs. But I think if employers were to look at retrenchment as the last resort, we can save a lot of jobs. And it is unfortunate, Sakina, that there might be quite a few businesses that do not survive post-lockdown.
Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And that, of course, was Bheki Nhlapho, Senior Associate at the Cliff Decker Hofmeyr Employment Practice, answering some of our questions as to how the retrenchment process is due to work during COVID-19 and how employers and employees can access benefits to mitigate the losses incurred by the lockdown.